Have you ever felt like your perfect life was just a facade, hiding a darkness that threatened to consume everything you held dear? Imagine waking up every day in a beautiful home, with a loving partner by your side, only to realize that beneath the surface lies a hidden addiction that could shatter your world. This is my story, one of love, betrayal, and the desperate search for redemption. As I sit here reflecting on the past few years of my life, I can't help but feel a whirlwind of emotions. The memories flood my mind like a tidal wave, each one more vivid than the last. I was living what I thought was the American dream. I had a steady job, a beautiful wife named Emily, and a cozy little house in the suburbs. But as I would soon discover, the picture-perfect life I had built was nothing more than a fragile illusion. It all started innocently enough. Emily and I had been married for just over 3 years, and while we faced the usual ups and downs of married life, we were generally happy. We laughed together, shared our dreams, and built a life filled with love. But as the months passed, I began to notice subtle changes in Emily. She seemed distant at times, her laughter less frequent, and her eyes often clouded with a sadness I couldn't quite place. At first, I attributed it to the stress of work. Emily had recently taken on a new role at her job, and I figured she was just overwhelmed. But as the weeks turned into months, her behavior grew more erratic. She would come home late from work, claiming to have meetings that ran long, and when I asked her about her day, she would brush me off with vague answers. I wanted to trust her, but the nagging feeling in my gut told me something was off. One night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I watched Emily as she slept, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the bedside lamp. She looked peaceful, but I could sense an underlying tension. I thought back to the times when we would stay up late, talking about our hopes and fears, sharing our innermost thoughts. Those moments felt like a distant memory now, replaced by a growing chasm that I couldn't quite understand. As the days turned into weeks, I decided to confront Emily about my concerns. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap that was forming between us. I approached her one evening, my heart racing as I prepared to voice my worries. But as soon as I opened my mouth, I felt a wave of doubt wash over me. What if I was wrong? What if I was just being paranoid? I hesitated, the words caught in my throat. Instead, I chose to observe. I became a silent witness to the changes in her behavior. I noticed the way her hands trembled slightly when she poured her morning coffee, or how her laughter seemed forced, like she was trying to convince herself that everything was okay. I wanted to believe that it was just a phase, that she would return to her old self. But deep down, I knew I was fooling myself. Then came the day that would change everything. I had taken a day off work, hoping to surprise Emily with a romantic dinner at home. I spent the day preparing her favorite meal, the aroma of garlic and herbs filling our kitchen. As I set the table, I felt a sense of excitement bubbling inside me. Maybe this would be the moment we would reconnect, the spark that would reignite our love. But as the clock ticked closer to dinner time, I began to worry. Emily was late. I texted her, but there was no response. Anxiety crept in as I paced the living room, glancing at the clock every few minutes. When she finally walked through the door, my heart sank. She looked disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. I wanted to reach out, to pull her into my arms, and tell her everything would be okay, but something held me back. I could sense the tension in the air, a wall that had grown between us. Instead of asking her what was wrong, I tried to act normal. I served dinner, forcing a smile as we sat across from each other. But the silence was deafening. As we ate, I couldn't help but notice how little she touched her food. Her gaze was distant, lost somewhere far away. I wanted to shake her, to demand answers, but I felt paralyzed by fear. What if I uncovered something I wasn't ready to face? That night, as I lay in bed next to her, I felt a sense of despair wash over me. I was losing her, and I didn't know how to stop it. I closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep, but the darkness was suffocating. I could hear her soft breathing, but it felt like an ocean separating us, a reminder of the distance that had grown between us. Days turned into weeks, and the pattern continued. Emily became more withdrawn, and I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I began to question everything. The love we had built, the dreams we had shared, and the future we had envisioned together. I wanted to confront her, but I was terrified of what I might find. Then came the unexpected twist. One evening, as I was cleaning out the garage, I stumbled upon an old box filled with forgotten memories, photos from our early days together, letters we had written to each other, and trinkets that held sentimental value. I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me as I sifted through the contents, each item a reminder of the love we once shared. But as I dug deeper, I found something that made my heart drop. A small, empty pill bottle. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at it, the reality of what it meant crashing over me like a wave. I felt a mix of anger, confusion, and fear. Had Emily been hiding a dependency? Was this the reason for her distant behavior? In that moment, everything clicked into place. The late nights, the mood swings, the sadness in her eyes. It all made sense now. I felt a surge of emotions, betrayal, sadness, and an overwhelming desire to help her. But as I stood there, holding the empty bottle, I also felt a sense of helplessness. How could I confront her about this? What if she denied it? What if it pushed her further away? That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a storm brewing inside me. I wanted to confront Emily, to demand answers, but I also feared what the truth might reveal. I tossed and turned, replaying the moments we had shared, the laughter that had once filled our home now replaced by an unbearable silence. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering between love and despair. Finally, I reached my breaking point. I knew I had to talk to her. I had to confront the shadows that had crept into our lives. The next evening, I waited for her to come home, my heart pounding in my chest. When she walked through the door, I could see the weariness etched on her face. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation that would change everything. As I approached her, I felt a rush of emotions, love, fear, and an overwhelming desire to save her from herself. I gently took her hands in mine, searching her eyes for a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with. But as I opened my mouth to speak, the words caught in my throat. I felt vulnerable, exposed, and terrified of what lay ahead. I finally managed to ask her about the pill bottle. Her reaction was immediate. I watched as her face drained of color, her eyes widening in shock. In that moment, I felt a mix of relief and dread. She hadn't denied it, but the fear in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. Emily broke down, her walls crumbling as she poured out her heart. She admitted to struggling with anxiety and depression, and how she had turned to medication as a way to cope. I felt a wave of empathy wash over me, but I also couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. She had been hiding this from me, and I struggled to reconcile the love I felt with the pain of her deception. As she spoke, I could see the weight of her struggles etched on her face. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I felt trapped in my own turmoil. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to embrace her, and tell her that we would get through this together. But another part of me felt angry, hurt that she had kept this from me for so long. In the days that followed, we began to navigate the complexities of her dependency. Emily started attending therapy sessions, and I made a conscious effort to be there for her. I wanted to support her, to help her find a way back to herself. But as I watched her struggle, I felt a growing sense of despair. Would she ever truly recover? Would our love survive this storm? The journey was fraught with challenges. There were days when Emily would seem like her old self, her laughter returning, her eyes sparkling with life. But then there were days when the darkness would creep back in, and I would watch helplessly as she battled her demons. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying to balance my love for her with the fear of losing her to the shadows. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I felt a wave of hopelessness wash over me. I wanted to believe that we could overcome this, but the reality of her struggles weighed heavily on my heart. I looked at her, the woman I had once loved so fiercely, and felt a pang of sadness. Was this the future we had envisioned together? As the months passed, I found myself grappling with my own emotions. I felt a mix of love and resentment, a constant battle between wanting to support her and feeling betrayed by her secrecy. I began to question everything: our relationship, our future, and whether we could truly heal from this. Then came the moment that would change everything again. One night, as I lay in bed, I received a text from Emily. She wanted to talk. My heart raced as I read her message, a mix of excitement and dread flooding my senses. What could she possibly want to discuss? I braced myself for the conversation that would inevitably change the course of our lives. When we sat down together, I could see the determination in her eyes. She spoke with a clarity I hadn't seen in months, sharing her desire to take control of her life. She wanted to go to rehab, to confront her dependency head-on. I felt a rush of emotions, fear, hope, and an overwhelming sense of pride. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the turning point in our journey. But as she spoke, I also felt a pang of fear. Would this be the end of us? Would her journey to recovery tear us apart? I wanted to support her, but I also feared what lay ahead. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. In the weeks that followed, we began to prepare for her time in rehab. I felt a mix of emotions, pride in her decision, but also a sense of loss. As she packed her bags, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives were about to change forever. I wanted to be there for her, to support her every step of the way, but I also felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. When the day finally came for her to leave, I felt a mix of sadness and hope. As I watched her walk away, I knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. I wanted to believe that we could emerge from this stronger, but the fear of the unknown loomed large. In the months that followed, I found myself grappling with my own emotions. I missed Emily more than I could express, but I also felt a sense of relief. She was taking control of her life, and I wanted to support her in any way I could. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the ache of her absence. As the weeks turned into months, I began to notice changes in myself. I was learning to confront my own fears, to embrace the uncertainty of the future. I realized that love was not just about holding on. It was also about letting go, allowing the other person to find their own path. When Emily finally completed her program, I felt a rush of emotions. I was proud of her, but I also felt a sense of apprehension. Would she be able to reintegrate into our lives? Would we be able to reconnect on the same level we once had? As we stood together in the parking lot of the rehab center, I felt a mix of joy and fear. I reached out, taking her hand in mine, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of hope. We had both been through a journey of self-discovery, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As we drove home, I couldn't help but reflect on our journey. We had faced challenges that had tested our love, but we had also grown stronger through adversity. I realized that our relationship had evolved, and I had faith that we could navigate this new chapter together. But as we settled back into our routine, I felt a lingering question in my heart. Would we be able to find our way back to each other completely? Would the shadows of the past continue to haunt us, or could we emerge from this stronger than ever? As I sit here, reflecting on our journey, I find myself at a crossroads once again. I want to believe in the power of love, in the possibility of healing and redemption. But I also know that the road ahead will not be easy. To anyone listening, I ask for your advice. How do we move forward from here? How do we rebuild trust and connection after everything we've been through? I'm filled with hope, but also uncertainty. What does the future hold for us? I'm ready to embrace the unknown, but I can't help but wonder if love is truly enough to conquer the shadows that linger in our hearts.